Stoic the Vast took a plasma blast to the chest, a direct hit from Toothless, his own son's dragon, the most powerful shot in the HTTYD universe, fired at point-blank range, and he took it willingly. He stepped in front of that blast to save Hiccup. But what if he didn't? What if Stoic dodged? What if Valka pulled him away? What if the blast missed by a single inch? Because if Stoic survived that moment, every single thing that happens after it changes. The third film doesn't exist. The hidden world is never found. Toothless never meets the light fury. And the ending we all know, the one where Hiccup says goodbye to his best friend, never happens.
One man surviving one moment rewrites the entire franchise. And the alternate timeline is not what you'd expect. Because in a world where Stoic lives, the HTTYD universe actually gets darker. Let's start with what Stoic's death actually did to the story. Because most people think it was just sad. It wasn't. It was the engine that powered everything after it.
When Stoic dies, three things happen simultaneously. First, Hiccup is forced to become chief. He doesn't choose it. He doesn't feel ready. He's 20 years old. He just watched his father die in front of him, and now an entire village is looking at him for answers. This is the moment Hiccup stops being a boy and becomes a leader. Second, Toothless breaks free from the bewildered beast's mind control. The grief, the guilt, the shock of what he's done snaps him out of it. And in the final battle, Toothless challenges the Alpha. He does this not because he's powerful, but because he's fighting for Hiccup. He's trying to fix what happened. Third, Berk unites. Stoic's death gives the Vikings something they've never had before. A reason to fight not out of tradition, but out of love. They're not fighting because they're Vikings. They're fighting because they lost their chief.
Now remove all of that.
If Stoic survives, Hiccup doesn't become chief. Not yet. Stoic is still the leader. He's still making the decisions, and Hiccup, who spent the entire second film avoiding the responsibility of leadership, gets exactly what he wanted. More time. But that time is a trap, because without being forced into leadership, Hiccup never discovers who he is. He never realizes he has the heart of a chief and the soul of a dragon. He never understands that his identity is a bridge between two worlds. Those words come from Valka at Stoic's funeral. In a world where there's no funeral, those words are never spoken. Hiccup stays exactly where he was at the beginning of the second film. A 20-year-old who would rather fly with Toothless than lead his village. A kid playing explorer while his father runs the world. And here's where it gets complicated. What happens to Toothless? If Stoic survives the blast, that means Toothless fired at Hiccup, and someone pulled Hiccup out of the way instead. Toothless still fired under mind control. He still tried to kill his best friend, and he still remembers it. But without Stoic's death to drive Toothless into his challenge against the Alpha, what motivation does he have? Stoic is alive. The guilt exists, but it's less consuming. The rage isn't there. In the film, Toothless challenges Drago's bewildered beast because he's fueled by grief and love. That combination makes him break the Alpha's control permanently. It's the emotional climax of the entire franchise.
Without Stoic's death, that climax doesn't happen. Toothless doesn't challenge the Alpha. The bewildered beast keeps control of Berk's dragons, and Drago wins. Think about that. In a world where Stoic lives, Drago Bloodfist conquers Berk.
Now, some fans will say Stoic himself would have fought Drago. He's the most powerful Viking alive. He would have rallied the village. He would have found another way. And maybe Stoic is formidable. But Stoic's strategy throughout the second film was always the same. Fight harder, hit them with more force, meet strength with strength. That strategy doesn't work against Drago. Drago has a bewildered beast, a dragon the size of a mountain that can control every other dragon. No amount of Viking strength beats that. The only thing that beat Drago was Toothless breaking the Alpha's control through pure emotional will. And that emotional will came from grief. Remove the grief, remove the victory. So in this alternate timeline, we have Drago conquering Berk with his dragon army. Stoic is alive but defeated. Hiccup is not chief. Toothless is still under mind control. And every dragon on Berk now belongs to Drago. Let's keep going. What happens to HTTYD3 in this timeline? In the real timeline, the third film starts with Hiccup as chief. He's struggling with the responsibility. He's overcompensating by rescuing every dragon he can find. And when Grimmel arrives, Hiccup has to make the hardest decision of his life: send the dragons away to keep them safe. That decision only works because Hiccup is chief. He has the authority and the emotional maturity to let Toothless go. He understands sacrifice because he watched his father make the ultimate sacrifice. In the alternate timeline, none of this exists. If Stoic is alive and still chief during the events of the third film, Stoic would make different decisions than Hiccup. Stoic's instinct is to fight, always fight. He would never willingly send the dragons away. He would dig in, fortify Berk, and prepare for war with Grimmel, and Grimmel would destroy him. Because Grimmel is smarter than Stoic, Grimmel doesn't fight with force. He fights with manipulation, traps, and patience. Stoic's head-on approach is exactly what Grimmel would exploit. The irony is devastating. Stoic surviving the second film leads to his defeat in the third. The man who survived a plasma blast to the chest would lose to a man with a crossbow and a plan. But the biggest change in this alternate timeline isn't about battles, it's about the ending.
In the real timeline, Hiccup lets Toothless go. He sends his best friend to the hidden world. He makes a choice that no one else in the franchise could make. Not Stoic, who would fight to keep the dragons. Not Valka, who would hide them. Only Hiccup understands that the way to protect dragons is to give them freedom, even if it means losing them.
That understanding comes from loss. Hiccup lost his father. He knows what it feels like to have someone you love taken from you, and he decides that the only way to prevent that pain for every dragon and every Viking is to separate them willingly, on their own terms, with love, not with violence. If Stoic never died, Hiccup never learns this lesson. He never understands sacrifice at that level, and the dragons never go to the hidden world, which means the ending of the franchise doesn't happen. Toothless never finds the light fury, the night lights are never born, and the final scene where Hiccup and Toothless reunite years later with their children never exists. One death, one single moment, and the entire future of both species hangs on it. Here's what haunts me about this alternate timeline. In a world where Stoic lives, everyone gets what they want in the short term. Hiccup gets more time with his father. Toothless doesn't carry the guilt of killing his writer's dad. Valka gets her husband back for good. Berk keeps its chief. But in the long term, everything falls apart. Drago conquers, Grimmel hunts. The dragons are never freed, and the bond between Hiccup and Toothless, the most important relationship in the franchise, never reaches its fullest expression. Because that bond isn't just about friendship, it's about two beings who love each other enough to let go. And letting go only happens when you understand what loss really means. Stoic's death taught Hiccup loss, and loss taught Hiccup love, and love taught Hiccup to open his hand and let Toothless fly away. Without that chain of events, the story ends differently, not happily, not tragically, just incomplete. A world where nobody grows up, where Hiccup stays a boy, where Toothless stays a pet, where the dragons stay hidden in plain sight, waiting for the next Drago or the next Grimmel to come along and take them. That's the darkest part of this alternate timeline. Not that something terrible happens, but that nothing meaningful happens at all. Everyone survives, but nobody transforms. Everyone lives, but nobody truly grows.
And here's the question that makes this theory so painful.
Did Stoic know? When he stepped in front of that blast, was it pure instinct? Or did some part of him understand that his death would be the thing that turned his son into the leader Berk needed?
Stoic spent years trying to make Hiccup a chief through training, through speeches, through pressure. None of it worked. Hiccup resisted every attempt.
But Stoic's death accomplished what his life never could. It made Hiccup step up, not because someone told him to, because there was no one left to do it for him. The greatest Viking who ever lived couldn't make his son a leader by living. He could only do it by dying, and that might be the most devastating truth in the entire franchise. So here's my question. Was Stoic's death necessary, or could Hiccup have become the leader he needed to be some other way? And if you could go back and save Stoic, knowing everything that would change, would you? I don't know the answer, and I think that's what makes this the hardest question in HTTYD, because saving someone you love shouldn't destroy the future, but in this story, it does. Tell me in the comments. This one is going to divide people. And if you haven't seen our other theories, subscribe to Berk Files. We've covered why Toothless is the last Night Fury, what Valka was really doing for 20 years, and the live-action changes that prove a sequel is coming. Every HTTYD mystery investigated. I'll see you in the next one.